Tandem Nomads, episode 75.
The first one would be related to your visa. Mm-hmm. Are you allowed with the visa you currently have to launch a business?
Welcome to Tandem Nomads, the podcast show for expat partners. Every new episode is launched twice a month on Tuesdays. You will find here great inspiration and tips to build your portable career and thrive with your family in your global nomadic life. Hello, Nomad Nation. This is Emel Deregi, and today's episode is with Rosiane Houngbo-Monteverde. Rosiane, are you ready for the ride?
Ready, Emel.
Fantastic. So today's episode, Nomad Nation, is all about how to set up your company legally when you live abroad. So Rosiane will tell us all about this because she is a French corporate lawyer who built her career working for major companies before leaving France to join her husband in Bahrain. So she lives in Bahrain now. And there she managed to work for another major regional company. However, at the same time, she started realizing a real need for legal support for expats who build businesses away from their home base. This is what led her to launch her own company named Legal Nomads, a law firm for French expats abroad and foreign expats living in France, but also developing more and more services to all expats from around the world. So Rosiane is specialized in French law. However, although businesses regulations can be very different from a country to another, having worked in many international circumstances and companies, she will be able to share with us her experience and precious advice today to build your global nomad company. So, Rosiane, this was a very short overview of who you are. Is there anything I missed?
Your introduction is just perfect. Thank you very much. What could I add? I could add that I am a French qualified lawyer and a French citizen, born and raised in France, in Paris. And I've been living in Bahrain for almost 5 years now. And for those who don't know Bahrain, and believe me, I don't blame you, Bahrain is an island located in the Persian Gulf between Saudi Arabia and Qatar. And it's an independent kingdom where life is very sweet, actually.
That's really great to know that. It's we've been discussing it before we start this interview. And Nomad Nation, you should check out more about Bahrain. There's so many things we don't know. And if I know that you all love to travel and discover the world, and it seems to be much different than what we could imagine. So thank you for that introduction. And I would love to know more about your experience also as an expat partner before we start giving some information about how to set up legally your company when you develop your business abroad. But I would love to know, how was it for you when you knew that you might have to leave your career as a lawyer in a corporate world to go to Bahrain, join your husband? What can you share with us about that?
It was a big challenge because, I used to be working, a kind of cliche, the working, young, freshly graduated lawyer, very ambitious, focused on her career. I did not change a lot, actually, but I just get wiser, let's say that. And it was complicated when I joined Bahrain to change my status. I used to be an independent woman, working, having a good career in France, arriving in an Arabic Muslim country, being the wife of Mr. X. It was no more the same status at all, and I just had to reinvent my identity. This was the most difficult thing, and I didn't realize that moving abroad was not just to move, but to enroot yourself also. Okay. And I made a huge work on my identity and realizing that I was much more than just a lawyer. I was not born a lawyer. I am a woman with opinion, thought, desires, dreams, and this is what I am first of all. And after comes the status. And when you live in town, in big towns such as London, New York, or Paris, you tend to identify yourself just with your status, what you do for a living, while you are much more than that.
It's one of those big realizations that as well for me, it brought me to live abroad once I quit my job to be with my husband, because I've lived abroad before for my own job. But when I did it for my husband, it was that realization that how come is my identity so attached to what I do professionally? Because it gives you a status, and life in society is a lot about status. So it's up to us to make that definition of who we want to be as a person.
Absolutely.
And a very interesting point.
It's who you want to be as a person, but also the fact you realize that you are in charge and you really are responsible of your choices and your happiness. You cannot put your husband or your best half in charge of your happiness. And once you succeed in realizing that, realizing the fact that you are responsible of your own life and your own choices, things get much easier, actually. Yeah. It's not easy to identify and to accept. But once it's done, it's much easier. I mean, it was my the process I followed, and it's my personal experience.
So amazing. And I love that you said it's our choice. It's our choice, and we can make that change. And you made it by creating your company, Legal Nomads. So I really it's really fascinating. I think we can talk for hours about your personal experience, but I think you have so much to bring also as your professional experience as a lawyer for Global Nomads. So I would like to start with, in general now, could we just break down the legal points that we have to consider when building a portable business abroad?
You have several points to consider, to be honest, but let's try to do it like, a checklist.
Yeah.
The first one would be related to your visa. Mm-hmm. Are you allowed with the visa you currently have to launch a business? In some countries, it's more difficult than others. In some countries, with the current visa you have, you cannot launch a business, but maybe there is an opportunity or there is an option for you to change your visa. Which options are available for you? You have to think about it. Do you need a sponsorship from another company? Do you need to apply, basically, to a visa allowing you to launch a company? If you are not allowed to launch your own company, things can get more complicated, because you will have to face the fact that if you don't have the correct administrative authorization, you will be in an illegal situation. And this could be a bit dangerous for yourself and your family, the stability of your family. You basically could have effects on your husband or wife, because sometimes men follow their wives. It could have effect on the stability of the family. So we have to be careful with this first point, the visa.
Yeah.
If by chance or not, you are allowed to launch your own company, you will have several legal questions regarding your company. Would it be more interesting for you to set up your company in the country where you are? I mean, working from the country where you are, but also setting up your company in the country where you are currently living? Would it be more interesting for you to set up your company in offshore countries such as Dubai, Hong Kong, or the Marshall Islands? Mm-hmm. You will also have, so this would be the second checkbox. You will also have to check the tax treaties, the bilateral conventions and agreements regarding the incomes, the tax you will have to pay on the incomes received with your activity. And you will also have, let's say that it would be a fourth checkbox, to think about the responsibility, your liability as a business owner. What would be your liability in case of problem? This will depend on the law enforceable to your company. And it will also depend on the matrimonial convention you could have with your husband. Are you in joint ownership, separate ownership? This kind of question will have an impact on your business. And unfortunately, this point, as well as the point related to the social care, are often neglected, while they are fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
And the social care is also an important point, in the sense that when you are a housewife, you can benefit sometimes from your husband's insurance, or another independent state insurance. For example, in France, we have la Caisse des Français de l'étranger.
Mm-hmm.
But if you start having your own economical activity, the protection is not the same. It's no more the same. So there is an impact on your social protection. And most of the time, people don't think about that. And this is why lawyers, we are here to remind you that we have you have to be careful on these points.
That's such great points. So let me just summarize real quick before we go into the details a little bit. The first thing to look at is the type of visa we have. Does that visa allow us to register our company in the host country where we live? And if not, what are the other options that's possible to register in a third country or the base home? So we'll go into details about that. The second point you said to consider is the taxes. Look at the tax treaties between your home tax, where your home base tax-wise, and where you live, and what are the agreements that exist. Once you earn money and income, who do you own taxes to? So you have to look at that. And the third one that you mentioned is liability, and that's related to the form and the type of company you register. And well, you've been explaining it. I'm very good at rephrasing. But I did my share of research too, I have to say. So that's why I had to go through that too. So liability, very important, which basically, that's very interesting point that you said. The fact that the type of company you register can have an impact on your social security protection. And that's really interesting because liability, every type of entrepreneur has to register a certain type of company. And that type of company tells you how responsible you are if you have a legal issue with your companies. For example, if somebody sues you, how responsible are you with your personal assets? That's what you were explaining in different words. Yeah. And that's where you said, look at what is the impact of your social security insurance, because that, if you're not attached to your husband's insurance, then you have to look at what are the implications for you. So, yeah, wonderful. So it's amazing how you covered.
To work for me, Amel.
I don't have any credit here. You've been explaining all of that. But this is really important things that you really highlighted very well. Now I would love to ask you more details. I would love to tell you an issue that I see a lot with the expat spouses that help build their businesses is that issue of where do you set up your company when you move every 2-3 years. So do you have any advice about that?
This is a very tricky question.
Yeah.
It's very tricky because you are always swimming between two waters, and these two waters are your nationality and your home and your host country. Depending on the kind of expat you are you really traveling every 3 years? Are you, let's say, occasional expat where, you were supposed to travel every 3 years, but at the end of the story, you just moved twice and you stay 10 years in one country and 5 years in another. Depending on where you come from and what is your nationality, the easiest option could be to register your company in the country where you come from. Why? Because you understand the legal system, because you speak the language, because in case you have to come back home, you will be able to manage your company properly. This is comfortable, but it has some inconvenience. It can have some inconvenience depending on the tax treaties. that have been concluded between your home country and your host country. Some countries have tax policy that are more favorable than others, and it's always a case-by-case answer. I'm afraid I cannot give you a magical solution for all the situations. Of course, we know that some countries are more business friendly than others. You have the Emirates of Dubai, for example, that is tax free at the moment, but things are going to change because they plan to introduce a VAT. Now in Dubai, you have no VAT, no income tax, so it's just an entrepreneur paradise at the moment. It will not last forever. In Hong Kong is well known for its business-friendly policy, but with the recent regulations linked with the tax evasion and the money laundering, you have more and more controls in Hong Kong. So today, it's still easy to set up a business in Hong Kong, but you have a difficulty. It's to open an account related with your business is very complicated when you are not a resident in Hong Kong. So things are changing, and there is not one single answer applicable to all the cases.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Before we go more into details in that, Nomad Nation, I want to specify something. The point for me of this episode is to bring you some indication of what you have to look for and what directions you have to do your research, because that's the thing. Every case is very specific, and this is why it's very important. And that's my biggest message here: to do your research. Don't start your business without asking yourself these questions that we're going to highlight today. So we talked about those 4 points and the fact that, you just explained what solutions we have if we have to move every 2-3 years. But the point is, these are great bullet points to keep in mind when you start looking for a lawyer, a tax advisor who can help you. It's important to have a bit of knowledge to be able to talk to that person and ask the right questions. And this is the point of this episode, to give you a little bit of indications what you have to know about and what type of questions you have to ask your lawyer, because I think that's the thing, to know what questions to ask, because when we have no knowledge at all, it's hard to choose the right lawyer and the right expert to help you. And finally, the other message here is always reach out for experts. Always. And spend the time in finding the right one for you. So I found the right one for you here, Rosiane. We're going to talk about these topics, but it's your job, Nomad Nation, to make your research. And the point of this episode is to tell you which direction to lead your research. So that's the point.
Because individuals are individuals, they tend to think that they are not companies, so their legal problematics are easy. It's not all. Most of the time, because you are an individual, things can get more complicated than what you think.
Yeah. Very.
And the legal situation in which expats are involved to are very complex most of the time, because you have to deal with different regulations, different laws of different countries. So sometimes you will need different legal experts. In Legal Nomads, we try as much as possible to centralize all the information regarding the several jurisdictions that are involved in your legal situation. And don't be afraid with that. It's normal, because most of the time the expatriates are in complex situations, just because our situations are not common. The world and the law has not been meant for people traveling all around the world. We remain kind of exceptions.
Yeah, hopefully not for too long. One day we hope we'll live in a unified world, but it's not the case yet. So in the meantime, we have to find solutions. Very good, very important point to reach out to experts. And actually, I like that you highlighted that sometimes we need to reach out to multiple type of experts. I can give my examples in New York, where I had to find an immigration lawyer to figure out the solution with my visa. That I was one of the only diplomatic visa who started a company in New York. So nobody really knew, and I had to find somebody who knew about it. Second, the tax advisor. And third, the CPA, which is the accountant who will manage your taxes. So it's very important to coordinate those knowledges, and then up to you to make your decisions, your educated decision. So good point here. So I want to go back to the question I asked you about what to do as an expat partner if you're traveling the world regularly and where to set up your company. So you said one of the simplest way is to set up your company in your home base, which I also recommend a lot to my clients, because you know that at some point your family is legally based there. So you will always have to come back some point there. But you also said in certain cases not the best options because there are some tax regulations that make it more complicated. And actually, I have to tell you, I have a case, and maybe we can crack it here, where I have a great TN75 Nomads follower who was telling me that because her it's in Switzerland, where the if you leave Switzerland, you're not allowed to be registered tax-based there. So even if she wanted to be tax-based there, she could not. So, and her visa in the home country did not allow her to work. So that's like an impasse, But you mentioned that solution actually by saying maybe there's a third country that's a good country for nomads to set up their companies. You mentioned Hong Kong, Bahrain for now. Is there any countries you think it's good to look at as a third option if we're really serious about building this company and setting it up somewhere?
Yes, I mainly think about Dubai, about Hong Kong. Singapore can be a bit complicated. You have the Marshall Islands, but you have to be careful with this destination also because there is also, the blacklisted countries, the countries that don't cooperate with the country in order to exchange the financial information. So if you have a company that is registered in one of these blacklisted countries, you have to be careful because you could have some automatic taxation enforceable to your business, whatever be the amount of your income. So one more time, it's a case-by-case basis. For example, for your friend or the person you were just talking about now with the Swiss regulation, it's really something, very specific. They don't allow you to be based, a tax resident in this country, while in France it's not the same. In France, if you have your main economical activity that is based in France, you will be liable to pay taxes in France. Of course, you have a lot of details and more criteria, but the main principle is this one. If you don't live in France, if you are not a French resident, tax resident, you don't need to pay taxes in France. But as soon as your main incomes come from France, in that case, you will be considered as being a French resident. Tax resident. So, Swedes, they think in a way, they have their own laws. Americans have their own laws. If you're an American citizen, wherever you are, you will pay the taxes with or without a business. In France, it's something different. Germans have their own legislation. So you see where is the complexity and the case-by-case approach.
Yeah, but at the end, it all starts with this first question: where do you set up your company? And
Yes.
And that's where you have to consider those 4 points we mentioned: your type of visa, your taxes, the form of the company, the type of liability, and what is your insurance situation, your civil. In France, we say civil insurance, but I don't know in English how we say. But we all have to have liability insurance when we start a business, and
Yes.
and that's sometimes linked to your health insurance in certain cases. So make that research. How is your insurance situation and how is it linked to your partner? But is there other legal aspects of running a business on top of because I think we covered a lot of main points of what to consider to set up your business, to create it. And Nomad Nation, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out if you want more questions about these part, how to set up your company. But there are other aspects, legal aspects about running a business. Do you want to maybe sum them up for us, Rosiane? What kind of other things we have to think of legally when running a business?
So many things to think about. You could think about your the trademark,
Yeah.
how to register it. If you want just a local registration, if you want a world-wide registration, this is an important point. If you are dealing with e-commerce, also where to implement your e-shop, actually has an impact in your terms and conditions. What will be the law enforceable to your contract? If you are an EU a citizen, for example, or if you have an EU-based, European-based business, we have the principle of freedom. That means that you can choose the law that you want as soon as it's not contrary to the compulsory regulation enforceable in Europe. In America, you could decide to, choose the law of New York, the state of New York, for example, or anything. Actually, you have this freedom in choosing the law enforceable in your commercial relationship between your client and yourself. It could be the law of the country where your business is based, but it could also be another one. You have to really think about that in order to choose the most interesting laws for you and your client.
Mm-hmm. So basically, you're saying that we have to think about our contract with our client and mention that in the contract, what kind of law is this relationship subjected to? Is it what you? Okay.
That's it, exactly. Which law is applicable to the contract and which jurisdiction would be competent if you unfortunately have to go in front of the judge.
Okay, so that's one of the things to look at when you look for your lawyer, to ask them for advice on what kind of legislation and what rule of law is your relationship with your customer based on, and I guess you also need the language to be able to write it on the contract. I guess that's only a lawyer who can give you the exact wording to copy and paste in your contract.
Yes, because sometimes you copy past and you don't really understand what is involved, what is not written, but that is implied by the law you are choosing. In the European Union, the consumers are very protected. There are some mentions that have to appear in a compulsory way in your contract. There are some things that you cannot do. The civil law approach and the common law approach are very different, for example. The law of tort, liability, the way to draft a contract, the approach of the contractual relationship are very different depending on the fact you are coming from a civil law jurisdiction or a common law jurisdiction.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So if I just summarize again what we covered in extra other things to think about when you run a business, you mentioned the trademark. That's really important. Trademark is how do you protect the name of your company? And I think here's the link between you and me. I think the legal aspect and the business aspect. One thing I realized that some people start companies, names of companies without checking the URL, the domain name. So here is where we could really collaborate. Very important to, make sure that it's available on the legal aspect and online when you choose the name of your business, because the more your business is related to the keywords of your website, the better. So think about it. And trademark is basically the fact that you can protect the name and nobody can use it. You can either protect it locally or internationally. And obviously, any tips about internationally, because I know that I've been making some research and it's very expensive to be able to protect a name internationally. So any insights about that?
I mean, you also have to be reasonable with the impact of your trademark and your business. If you think to be as big and strong as big and strong as Coca-Cola, for example, you better register your trademark worldwide. And it's not because you have the same name than another company that it's forbidden for you to register the brand. It's just that you could not have the same, you cannot act in the same sector. If you check names like Cloud, like Bubble, or like Apple, are taken 1,000 times, but there is just one Apple dealing this computer. And if you try to open a company tomorrow dealing this computer and you call it Apple 1 or Apple A, it would sound like something not very good for you, actually. So,
and Apple will send you a letter and let you know that for sure. They have lawyers. They have lawyers checking that all the time.
No doubt about that. So having a single and your own name is the best case, the base hypothesis. But in case the name you are thinking about is already taken, if you don't have the same activity, I mean, you are selling computers, and the other person having the same names, the same trademark than yours, are selling food, there is no link between the two activities. And in this case, you don't enter into conflict.
Yeah. And what about historic usage? I don't know. Can you verify that for me? I know that when I've been doing research to protect the name Tandem Nomads, as I could not pay for every country, apparently that you can put a sign TM on your logo or something like that to say that this is my name. And although you don't pay for it, you can protect it for a while by just using it. The fact that you have proofs that you were the first one to use it. Is that true?
It is. It's true. I confirm.
Okay, so that could be a solution because we don't all have the means to right away invest in our trademarks because that's very expensive. So as long as you can prove that you have used the name before another person who's trying to do the same as you, then it can already be a good first step. And then eventually when you grow, you have to protect your name because you never know.
Absolutely. It's a good first step. And in any way, if you can afford to have a worldwide protection, you can have a local one. You can register your brand in the country where you live or in the country where you come from. But to register it somewhere and to expand your protection by the time later on. But to try to protect it as soon as possible, and even if it's on a restricted geographical zone, it would be protected, and you will have the proof that first of all you used it before the new competitors, and you registered it in a specific zone, but it was registered.
Yeah, and there's another thing to highlight: a trademark is not the same as the name of your company, right?
Yes.
So you can register your company with that name. It doesn't mean that. I mean, you don't have to protect the trademark. I mean, a trademark is a name and a company is a company. So can you explain that difference? You're better at that.
Because you can have what we call a commercial name. Let's say that Rosiane Houngbo-Monteverde is a lawyer. I am a lawyer. My company will have my name, Rosiane Monteverde Law Firm. I will be registered as Rosiane Houngbo-Monteverde Company. But for my commercial name, instead of using my name, I can decide that I will use Legal Nomads Law Firm. So it is the difference between the commercial name, that usually is the name that is registered, and the name of the company. The company is the owner in its asset. It has the name registered as a brand. The brand becomes a property of the company.
Exactly. Sorry?
Is it clear?
Yeah, for me it's clear. So basically, I love when you said your brand, because that's it. The trademark is actually your brand, and you can register your company with the name of your brand, and sometimes you don't. It depends. For example, a lot of lawyers register their companies under their own name, and then have a brand name that they use to promote themselves. And for instance, your domain name, your website, is the name of your brand, legal-nomads.com. Right? So it's not your own name, although when you bill your clients, I guess in the bill it has to be your company's name.
Both of them. Both of them. And the proof, the second proof is, for example, you can have one company owning several brands.
Yeah. Yeah, you can have different products because a brand can also be a product you're selling.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. I think it's very clear. Yeah. If you have more questions, Nomad Nation, reach out to us. I'm sure Rosiane will be happy to answer your questions, and you can ask them in the comment section of the webpage of this episode, and we'll make sure to reach out to you. So the other thing we mentioned is contract. Very important when you have a relationship with and you're selling to your clients. Have a proper contract and make sure to have a lawyer who helps you to design it. And one of the points to consider in that contract is, like you said, under which law, if there is an issue, is your relationship.
But which rule of law is enforceable, and which jurisdiction would be in charge of dealing with the case?
Thank you very much. That's it. Yeah. And what other things do we have to think about in a contract? To put it.
And
in general, we don't have to go in details.
in general, you really have to think about, depending on what you sell. Do you sell services? Do you sell products? Do you sell on demand? Are their products already ready? Are they personalized or not? But let's say that it's very important to define clearly what you are selling, under which condition, when will you deliver it? Do you allow to be reimbursed or not? Which condition would be applicable in case of termination of the contract? If you terminate the contract, if the client terminates the contract, how would you notify the other person about the termination? By writing, is a sole phone conversation would be sufficient? This kind of details, and it requires a little experience because when everything is fine, the terms and conditions are clear for everybody. Once a problem arises, the interpretation of the stipulations can be very different. So it's very important to be clear about what is sold, what is bought, under which condition. And unlike flexible contracts, because when contracts are too rigid, it also grants rigidity to the commercial relationship. So, but having a flexible contract requires to have professional having drafted that. Yeah. So yes, you have main stipulations, the object of the contract, the parties, the conditions of the duration of the contract.
Mm. Okay.
Especially if you sell services, are you offering these services in a specific time frame, or there is no time frame? And the law applicable, as we say, the jurisdiction. When is the contract completed, executed, shipped, completed?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of points that you mentioned here. Just real briefly, you mentioned the timing. You mentioned the type of product you're providing or service. How do you execute that service, or how you deliver the product? Also, payment, how you get paid. That's, I guess, one of the important parts to cover in your contract. And what happens if you don't get paid, for instance? So things to consider in your contract. And all of this, like we said many times, are things you have to think about and reach out to legal experts to help you do that. So what would you advise to the Nomad Nation on how do you decide if this is the right lawyer or expert for you? How can we choose the right person and know that this person can be a good lawyer?
We talked about this earlier, and I think you identified a good criteria, but I will let you about that. What do you think? But it's a good lawyer for you, I mean.
Okay, it's true. I'm on the consumer side. So, So I know that from my experience, I've been talking to a lot of lawyers to be able to launch stand-up nomads and help my clients with their businesses. And what I realized is that a lot of lawyers become very specialized in their domain. And when they meet with clients, they want to scale their business in a way by always offering the same answer. And for me, that's not a good way to do it. Providing the exact same legal advice to everybody. That's not a good. So how do I decide? I was asking myself, how can I know this person is giving me an advice that she's already used to give to 10,000 people, or is it really for me? And I realized the difference is a lawyer who spends more time asking questions than giving answers, for me, is a good sign that this lawyer is really trying to find the answer that fits me, and not something that this lawyer knows so much about that just want to give it to me as it is. What do you think?
I couldn't answer better. It's really that. I mean, having a lawyer who really understands to understand the situation in which you are, to identify the legal points that could be problematic, that could be a bit difficult or dangerous in your specific case. It can be frustrating sometimes for the client because they think, come on, I wanted an answer. He or she was not able to give me an answer about this specific point. But because your case is always special and unique, we have to make research. And the research can take time because your case will not be the same than the case of another client. I mean, in my practice of law and regarding my field of activity, I never have twice the same situation. It's very challenging, but it's also passionate. So asking questions, digging in order to figure out what is the key points, what is the detail that will make difference in order to bring the good solution.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, and I think that shows that you are involved in your client's, security and success by digging, because I know that New York is a lot about expertise, and people just you have people who only do C Corps and LLC. And if you go to them, they'll only provide you the LLC answer. LLC is a form of company. So it's really great. So Nomad Nation, the first thing, as I said many times, find the expert who will help you to figure out all those points, all your legal aspects of your company. And second, choose the right one by figuring out how much is this person really willing to help you with answers that are tailor-made to your situation, because God knows how expats are very particular situations for lawyers. So make sure that it is. And I think the more we find lawyers who are specialized with international people, the better. That's another thing also I would look at. Somebody who's used to have clients who are very international might be more helpful than somebody who's very local, obviously. That makes sense.
For sure.
Wow, we've covered so much. So just Nomad Nation, here are the things that we have to look at. How to set up your company, we covered that. The second thing, we talked about trademarks. Sorry. And the third thing about your contract. So, but you're also an expat partner, Rosiane, and you're also an entrepreneur. So could you share with us, before we say goodbye, some of your advice about what was important, what made you be able to succeed and grow your company as an expat partner? What would you advise to be successful in our businesses?
What would be my advice to be successful in a business? To really believe in what you are doing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you will fail. And you will face unexpected odds and obstacles. But most of the time, it's when you start, being discouraged and thinking, okay, I will never succeed in doing that things change, and the sense come back, the opportunity arrives, and you succeed in reaching your objective. I'm not saying that it would be easy. There will be a part of struggle, but it's worth it. I mean, to really believe in what you do, because it will not be easy every day. Sometimes it will be more complicated than other days. And if you don't believe in what you do, if you don't have a little faith in your project, you could abandon a bit too early. While the travel is definitely nice.
This is such an important thing. I know it seems very simple, but it's so important. Believe in what you do, because that's, if you're passionate about what you do, that's what's going to make you, build the resilience through the ups and downs of running a business, because it's not an easy thing. You're constantly challenged. So that's a very good point. So it was one more thing about online resources. Is there any legal online resources you would share with those who are looking for answers, legal answers?
In my case, it's a bit complicated because it's so global. I mean, if you are a French national, I will direct you, I will recommend a specific kind of website. And even though, on the internet, you find a lot of information, a lot of data. Some are, you can rely on some, and you cannot rely on the other. And when you are not an expert, you don't always know which one are reliable and which other is not. So I would not take the challenge to advise you any website.
That's good. It was a trap. I was testing you. Okay, but there's one thing actually, maybe you can tell us, you remember when you mentioned the countries where you could register your company, and you said some of them are not, they don't have like legal agreements. Is there like a list where we can find the countries who are...
So in this case, I could give you some websites. You can go, in the Chamber of Commerce of the country where you are living. Most of the time, they have resources, and they can orient you and help you to find the good conventions in which you could eventually find the solution or the answer you are looking after.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good advice, actually. Check out the Chamber of Commerce. That's a very good advice. In every country, every city, you have one. That's a great place, actually. Very, very good advice. Wow. Fantastic. I enjoyed this. I really loved... it's just an amazing thing that we got to meet through online, Nomad Nation. Rosiane was in my newsletter, and this is how we got to meet. And she's just a fascinating lady and so much energy. Thank you so much.
Thank you for everything you do for the Nomad community. Really, it's a blast. It's a blast, and I really appreciate. How we met by chance. I mean, on the internet, I was looking for my name, Legal Nomads, and I found a Tandem Nomad, and I just adored what you do. So thank you very much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to share my experience.
Oh, I'm so happy you did. Thank you so much for sharing your great experience. And Nomad Nation, check out Legal Nomads, the website. I will also put on this webpage, the webpage of this episode, all the information that she shared with us and the links to her website. So thank you again.
Let's keep in touch.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Nomad Nation, I hope that you enjoyed the great insights of our guest today. If you did, please make sure to share it with your friends. See you at the next episode, and stay tuned to turn your challenges into great opportunities.